preferences for running twice a week to build mileage stroke paces when balancing strength training. What's Dara's best 5K time? My best 5K is 19:06.
Oh.
In terms of building mileage and building pace, it's two very different things. So let's just start with mileage first. When balancing strength training, you're really looking at making sure there's not too much time on the feet and there's not too much load in your legs, right? So obviously time in the feet, you can have very long and slow runs that will still negatively impact your strength training just because you're actually moving around for so long. This is why we really don't like, if people are running 5Ks or trying to get a better 5K time, we don't like them doing things like half marathons and stuff on a regular basis. There's no need for that length. You'll get far better bang for your buck by doing more intervals closer to race pace and building your volume in that way, rather than going out on these incredibly slow, incredibly long and laborious runs. There is some merit in building a base of that longer running style, but by no means do you need to be doing a really long run every week, particularly if you're only going to run twice per week. What I will say is, in the initial volume accumulation phase, so when you're talking about building up your mileage, what I would start with is figuring out what that kind of critical pace will be for you. So how you can get to the point where you're able to run your 10K run pretty easily without a major drop off in pace or without major fluctuations of pace over the course of the 10K. So find what that pace is. Then once you've found that pace, 2K intervals or 2K repeats are really good. 1K repeats are really good. What I would say is, don't necessarily listen to the point where people are saying you have to do a long, slow run all the time. In terms of building pace then, building pace is firstly about finding really good, efficient running technique. The amount of people you see, like running has gotten so popular since COVID, and the amount of disgusting running technique that's out there at the moment is quite honestly upsetting. It's why you have so many people with so many running-related stress injuries. So figure out what good running technique looks like for you. Figure out where your own particular weaknesses are, whether that's a weakness in ankle stiffness, whether that's a weakness in midline and stability, whether that's a weakness in just strength to be able to maintain positions later on in the run. Figure out what you need to do to get that running efficiency up a little bit. And then you're really looking to be running with that really efficient style and stride, and then bringing that to a pace that you're happy to run with. So if it's something where you want to go sub 20 or you want to go sub 25 minutes, just figure out what that pace is per kilometer, whether that's a 4-minute kilometer, 5-minute kilometer, and then get as efficient as possible with that stride and with that running pace, and then repeat that as frequently as possible. At the start, I would expect you 100% to be comfortable at doing something 400 meters to 800 meters at that pace, and then gradually increasing the amount of those 800-meter repeats you're doing, and then gradually decreasing the amount of repeats, but increasing the distance you're doing for those repeats.
Definitely a very similar thing happened in running, where big trend happened with zone 2 was the only thing that mattered. And every single running influencer was like, longer, slower runs is better. And we fell into the trap, kind of like in strength training or physique, where it's like just one tap set or 5x5 is all you need. They also fell into that programming trap of being static with your programming. And it's definitely another thing which I've seen showing up over the years, which we see very frequently, is people really want to get stuck in to one style of training or get stuck into one format in that session. What's the best workout? And what do I do and how do I repeat that? And it makes perfect sense why people would think that. Now, not that strong. I'm not saying you're thinking like that, but I'm just saying it's a general trend. People start thinking about that because it's really easy to entertain in your mind. And you think all my runs are long and slow. Because when you start trying to plan out training, you start trying to plan for the future, you start trying to see what kind of progression should you do, what change in intensity, suddenly starts getting really complex. Sit down and write your own program, and then you're like, yeah, I'm going to train 4 times a week and I'm going to do 400 repeats today, and then next week I'm going to do them even faster. And then you start writing out these progressions, and then you do it and it turns into absolute nonsense or it doesn't work. And so it's hard for people sometimes to balance the complexity of training when multiple different things need to be happening at once. And if you look at any of the sports science research or literature, or if you go back further and look at the Soviets, you can look at their organizational training, and the complexity of that is difficult. If you want to achieve peak performance, you have to entertain a certain level of complexity in training. Now, it's hard again because this was, again, when you're looking at social media or YouTube, if you look at like recent stuff with, last year with people's PhDs and all this, is sometimes people use complexity as an angle to sell you things where they're trying to bamboozle you. And you're like, holy moly, this sounds so complex. And then unfortunately, you get to pin them swinging in the other direction like we do with a lot of things in life when it comes to culture. People just say, just lift the heavy circles, it's fine. But there's a happy medium where a bit of complexity is important. And so when trying to figure this out with running programming, trying to get faster runs is more complex than running for conditioning. So if I was using running as a conditioning tool for judo or jiu-jitsu or something like that, literally running till your legs fall off will actually work really well. And you could do the exact same workout every single week, not really get better at running, but definitely get better conditioning for your sport or judo to a certain degree. So the complexities of programming for running are quite interesting, and there's definitely a bit of nuance to those. There's a surprising amount of science, because as much science, I'll use that loosely, if we're seeing in like muscle building and all that now, the amount of research on endurance and aerobic sports is massive because they're so popular. They've been around for decades. Tons of research are really interested in them. You know, people like runners. It's popular sports. So there's a huge amount of complexity involved in that if you want to do that. Now, it's not so complex that you can't understand it if someone could explain it to you, but there's definitely nuance and complexity to getting better running times to be better runners. Yeah, definitely.